Despite assurances from some in the administration that President Trump is eager to attend the G7, the administration announcing late last night that the president was cutting his trip short, not attending a number of sessions on climate change and the environment. Today, the president is expected to hold bilateral meetings with his French and Canadian counterparts, Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron. Sources indicate the president is going to be aggressive in defending his America First policies, some which the United States' closest allies have called insulting and offensive. President Trump cutting his time at the G7 summit short amid a public war of words with the leaders of two of America's closest allies. One source telling CNN that as late as Thursday afternoon, President Trump was questioning why to even attend the summit at all, asking aides what the point would be after President Macron sent this pointed message. Quote, the American president may not mind being isolated, but neither do we mind signing a six-country agreement if need be. The president's advisors told him that canceling the trip entirely would look like he was backing away from a fight that he started. So one source says Mr. Trump told aides he'll enter the talks swinging. A short time later, President Trump firing off a number of tweets, writing, quote, please tell Prime Minister Trudeau and President Macron that they are charging the U.S. massive tariffs and create non-monetary barriers, before noting, look forward to seeing them tomorrow.
We're talking everything through. There may be disagreements. I regard this as much like a family quarrel. I'm always the optimist. I believe it can be worked out.
President Trump also calling Trudeau indignant after the Canadian Prime Minister vowed to confront Mr. Trump over tariffs.
His unacceptable actions are hurting his own citizens. It is American jobs which will be lost because of the actions of the United States and its administration.
The harsh rhetoric in stark contrast to the optimism President Trump is expressing ahead of his summit with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un.
I think I'm very well prepared. I don't think I have to prepare very much. It's about attitude. It's about willingness to get things done.
But President Trump also reiterating that he's willing to walk away from negotiations.
If they don't denuclearize, that will not be acceptable. We cannot take sanctions off. Maximum pressure is absolutely in effect. We don't use the term anymore because we're going into a friendly negotiation. If you hear me saying we're going to use maximum pressure, you'll know the negotiation did not do well, frankly.
The president suggesting that the summit could be extended and that he would not hesitate to invite Kim to the White House if the talks go well.
And I think it would be well received. I think he would look at it very favorably, so I think that could happen.
And President Trump heads directly to Singapore from Quebec tomorrow for his summit with Kim Jong-un. Notable that perhaps some of the brightest diplomatic fireworks may actually happen on friendly territory here in Canada during the G7. John and Allison.
All right, Boris Sanchez for us in Quebec City. We'll be watching that arrival very, very carefully to see, how warm.
The body language.
The body language.
We are very into the body language here. Will there be another man shake that they enjoy?
Maybe they can separate their physical from their emotional relationship. I'm just saying.
Wow.
There are people who can, so maybe that will happen. All right, joining us now to discuss, CNN political and national security analyst David Sanger. He's also a national security correspondent for the New York Times and reporter and editor-at-large at CNN Politics, Chris Cillizza.
And body language expert.
Body language expert. David Sanger.
Noted.
The president going to Quebec, going to the G7 for a much shorter time, well, at least a little bit of a shorter time than previously anticipated, obviously deeply uncomfortable about what may happen in the next 24 hours.
I've covered G7 summits now for a few decades. I've never seen a leader leave early with no clear outside reason. I've been to some where a terrorist incident or something caused people to leave. But in this particular case, it's clear that the president, first of all, didn't want to go. Secondly, doesn't want to get into this argument. And thirdly, is incredibly angry at two leaders with whom he thought he was building up a good relationship, Trudeau and Macron. And he's had pretty harsh conversations with the two of them, and they were sort of the last two who thought that they could actually go deal with him. He's also leaving before any of the discussions on environment any of these issues that are central to what the other 6 members of the G7 have in mind. Imagine what's happened here, which is basically the president is saying, I'm going to come in to lecture you, and then I'm going to leave.
Chris Cillizza, the fight is already underway. We don't have to wait until we read the body language. It's already happening and playing out on Twitter. Here's what the president said yesterday at 7:44 p.m. about Justin Trudeau. Prime Minister Trudeau is being so indignant, bringing up the relationship that the U.S. and Canada had over the many years and all sorts of other things. But he doesn't bring up the fact that they charge us up to 300% on dairy, hurting our farmers, killing our agriculture. That was preceded, before that, Macron had tweeted this: the American president may not mind being isolated, but neither do we mind signing a 6-country agreement if need be, because these 6 countries represent values. They represent an economic market which has the weight of history behind it and which is now a true international force. Well, this will be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump is I think, pretty simple to understand if you don't overthink it, which is he likes people who say and do things he likes, and he doesn't like people who say and do things he doesn't like. I just don't think it's that much more complicated. I think David hits on a good point, which is I think you're seeing a little of this sort of temper, I'm going to take my ball and go home, played out even more with this because he thought that Trudeau and Macron were 2 people who were going to do what he wanted, right? He knows that Angela Merkel in Germany, for example, they've never had the warmest relationship. He has low expectations there. But for these 2, they got along great. They had nice visits at the White House. Everything went perfectly fine. Remember, he was at Bastille Day with Macron. So I think it's a combination of them not doing what he wants and him expecting that they would do what he wants. I just don't think it's more than that. He's incredibly transactional, and those transactions are based on how people treat him personally.
The stunning discrepancy between what we saw with Macron and the president earlier, and we can put that up so you can see the pictures. These men have a fond, close relationship. There was hugging, there was kissing, there was dandruff picking, hand holding.
Oh my gosh.
And look, you can make light of it, but the bottom line is here that both President Trump and Emmanuel Macron went out of their way to literally show us how close they are. And now David Sanger, Emmanuel Macron is talking about subtraction, international diplomatic subtraction, make the G7 basically the G6 plus 1. That is a major development in the U.S. relationship with its closest allies.
John, it's even beyond that, because the G7 always had the United States at the center of it as the world's largest economy. And then it was essentially the countries arrayed around it, all trying to come together first in one common economic policy and then in common political efforts. You'll remember that after the fall of the Berlin Wall, it was then expanded for a while to the G8, and it was going to bring in Russia as a full partner. Well, obviously that fell apart, and now you really have this sense of America first being America alone. When you see a statement like Macron's that says we're perfectly happy to have a statement come out from the G6 who share common values, the implication being the United States does not share those values. And that gets a little bit beyond a family breach.